I'm Tony Lockwood, founder of Thompson Wright Partners, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest episode of Inside Track, where I discuss business transformation journeys with leading figures in industry. As this is our first pod in 2021, I'd like to wish you a very happy new year. Although I don't think that we will forget 2020 for a long time, not least because we launched this podcast. I'm sure that you, like me, are looking forward to 2021 and the opportunities that it will bring. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Troy Henshall, the Director of Business Services and Transformation at the social housing organisation Wandle. Thanks, Troy. Thanks for joining us today. Great to have you on this episode. Looking back on your career, you can split your experience into two elements. That gained prior to joining the world of social housing, and then the last 12 years within the sector. Can you provide a brief sort of summary of your career to date and how you have transitioned into the world of change and transformation?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, from school, I joined Prudential at the height of the exciting personal pension boom in the kind of late 80s and early 90s, and kind of just went in doing general admin. And I've been really lucky actually in my career. People have given me such fantastic opportunities, as all great managers do, I suppose, as you go through your roles. And towards the end of my time at Prudential, I was one of the only kind of in-house people put on a project called Project Trinity, which is a major change program. So back in the 80s, 90s, it was green screen kind of dumb monitors we were using, and so we were looking at that type of transformation. It was the first time we'd really seen the activity-based kind of costing models come in, certainly in the organization I was in. I'd been there for a while at that time. So that was kind of my first insight into change, into kind of understanding processes, all those kind of things. Because when you join organizations, you're programmed, aren't you? You're trained in, this is how you process a pension application, this is how you do this, Absolutely. This is how you do that. Whereas this was actually looking at it from a different perspective of not get this done, but actually what's the best way to get it done. And of course, at that time, we really saw growth of contact centers, and the concept of that was all the time, hold on, you're at your desk processing and the phone goes, so it interrupts you, so you answer the phone, put it back down, got to find your place again. And then Prudential might, like many other organizations at that time, said, well, hold on, we can be more effective if we remove the phone from that process and you just straight process. You process 10 times as many, and someone else will answer all the calls in a call center type environment. So that was kind of part of what Project Trinity was looking at. We also, my role there kind of extended. Then we were looking at one of the first contact centers. It was also, dare I say, it was a pension boom, but also a time of mis-selling accusations and changes put in place around kind of advisors at that time. So we also then set up the first contact center, or call center as it would have been then, because we weren't using the web and other channels, to kind of help salesmen sell pension applications in that situation. So proper rock and roll stuff, really, in respect to that. So that was the first change, kind of understanding how you look at things in a different way, look at the impact of those changes, and we did some of that work. And then from there, I moved on to an outsourcing company called Computer Sciences Corporation. They're actually a big outsourcer in the US at the time, running things like NASA and other kind of major systems outsourcing. And there we were doing, again, kind of financial sector, but whole kind of setup of outsourcing, back office, front office, the whole works, kind of processing applications for investment products for, people like Commercial Union and other kind of financial people would be advertising in papers and things like that. So again, that kind of gave me an insight into how to set things up from the start, because it was greenfield, kind of brand new. You did everything from scratch, albeit there was a model to it, really, in respect to that stuff.
It's fascinating, that, isn't it? I've been involved in a number of new starts. Got involved in Egg, which linked to Prudential, and but as you say, that opportunity doesn't come around too often. But when it does, it's a fascinating opportunity to get your teeth into.
Yeah, absolutely. And Egg's an interesting case study, actually, I think, around kind of culture and change, because you'll probably tell me it's an old wives' tale now, but I heard a story about Egg when they went to recruit people because they were up in Derby, weren't they?
Yeah.
That they didn't use the Prudential name because they didn't want to attract, the type of people that associate with Prudential. This was a fresh, modern business,
No,
and it's that cultural point which runs at the heart of transformation and change that we're going to talk about. But that was really interesting to me and opened my eyes to that kind of concept of why wouldn't you use your brand? Because Prudential brand's strong, it's been around, lots of employees in the UK and worldwide. But that was that true?
No, it was absolutely, yeah. It was, and it was very much focused around recruiting people with the right attitude, and the right communication style, and they didn't need to have financial services experience at all. In fact, in many cases, we didn't want people with financial services,
customer service.
Yeah, because you can train that, and you can train all the other stuff. But you can't train that empathy and that ability to listen, that ability to connect with people.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I mean, I think that culture will probably run at the heart of some of the stuff we talk about today. But that was a really interesting kind of working Prudential, moving into outsourcing, and I think that fundamental difference of transforming from a starting point of an established organization and then setting up something from scratch, fundamentally different. If you get the second one right, you haven't got much transformation to do thereafter. But of course, organizations that have been in place a long time, established culture and practices that you're trying to change, obviously a much harder job, really, in respect to that.
Yeah, but I think, interestingly enough, even after you've been involved in a new start and you've set up the processes and you set up the systems and the people in the right way, if that organization goes through quite a rapid growth, then there's a catch-up process to be done. And I've been involved in a number where one in particular started over a course of 10 years. It grew from 70 million up to 1.2 billion revenues. And there's probably 5 or 6 major transformations in that 10 years, just because they had to catch up and they had to invest in new technology. They had to improve and adapt the processes. So it is that constant business improvement stuff, which is a little bit like you're doing at the moment, isn't it, in terms of your role at the moment?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And of course, the other thing is that the private sector is so competitive. You have to move at that faster pace to deliver some of that, as you say. The growth, you can't just go, well, if we get it wrong, we'll start again tomorrow, because actually you've missed out on that business. And I think that probably leads me quite nicely into, at the end of Computer Sciences Corporation, actually, I did a few assignments overseas, kind of consultancy type assignments, which were really interesting. Again, opened my eyes to some of the different ways of working, kind of thing. And then I ended up moving into consultancy for a while. And one of my first gigs was actually working for John Lewis as a client on what they had at the time was a bride's book service, which is kind of a gift service. And then I kind of supported them in kind of the analysis of how to take that forward, because they kind of had one in each store spread around the country, and that kind of ended up moving to what they now have, or what they had, the gift list type service. So again, working in the different sectors, retail, financial services, it was really opening my eyes to kind of some different practices, different ways of working, and the different cultures that kind of exist within that, really. And then I kind of fell into housing, as a lot of people seem to do. I actually went to an organisation that was delivering services all over the country, housing services, but also ran an out-of-hours contact centre, so a bit like an outsourced kind of centre. And that's what attracted me to that, really, not the kind of housing side specifically. So we went in there to ECHG, and I worked there for a number of years. And then towards the end of that, we worked at the time one of the biggest mergers in the sector. ECHG merged with Riverside, and I kind of worked on that side. And again, that was significant. If we're talking about change there, we talked about a national provider of housing spread over 180 local authorities. So massively kind of thinly spread over all of those local authorities. Riverside, really strong kind of Midlands, Northwest kind of, and running to the Northeast kind of side. And the outcome of the merger was that ECHG would become a specialist in care and support, and the kind of general needs, more traditional housing, would move into the Riverside stuff. And we ended up going through that process. We had to put like 1,000 people at risk to go through restructures and stuff like that, because Care and support, as we know, is not a generally profitable business, and we had to kind of revise the whole business model for them, and that was a real challenge. That was a real challenge on the hearts and minds stuff, because every employee was impacted. Shortly before we, a couple of years before we did the merger, we'd relocated the head office from Hendon up to Leicester. So we brought loads of new people in. We built a new office there. Specifically, we owned it. So lots of different kind of things to go through as part of that change. The contact centre had always been in Leicester, so there was always a hub to kind of build around. But yeah, that was really interesting for me, that kind of the coming together of cultures in a merger kind of situation.
I was going to ask you about that. I think, like you say, although both operated in housing, social care, I've worked across a number of different social housing organisations over the last 5 or 6 years, and although they're all doing effectively the same role, it is fascinating just to compare and contrast the cultures in each of the organisations. I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised, but I know of a number where they've gone into a merger, that has been the number one challenge. Of combining and merging those cultures and the differences that exist across the organisations.
Yeah, and I think if you look across the sector, you've got some quite commercial entities working and a real focus on that, and you've got others that are more customer centric and more customer focused, and of course the smaller, more specialist organisations. And I remember this from housing corporation type audit commission type inspections many years ago, where we go, oh yeah, we're unique, we can't comply with this, we're unique, where actually it's that kind of 80% is probably not that unique, but there probably is 20%, depending on your history, depending on where you come from, what you do as a specialism is very unique, and it's that kind of gets driven into people, I think. And I think when we go then through change, we have to understand some of those things, and particularly IT, we have to understand those things to understand how we kind of do that. So so I worked on that. Then I went back into consultancy for a while, a few IT projects, but still within the housing sector. And then one of those projects down at First Wessex turned into a role where there'd been a merger, much similar to the ECHD Riverside, and they were still running kind of separate streams. So 3 back office, kind of 2-3 finance systems, all of that stuff. And my role as corporate services director was really to bring those together. Also collapse the separate boards into a single board. So yeah, we did that. And again, the background of those organisations became interesting, because 3 main housing providers, 2 of which were stock transfers, 1 of which wasn't. So of course there's a history connection to local authority that affects kind of how those things work, and promises that were made at the time of kind of those stock transfers or the mergers, really. So I think I went in about a year, 18 months.
Significant differences on terms and conditions, I assume, as well, which would have been interesting to manage that change through.
Yeah, from recollection, I'm a bit old now, so my mind doesn't remember all of the things. But actually, that didn't feel like one of the trickiest things, really. But yeah, I mean, certainly you're of course right. There are real challenges. I mean, fortunately, they were all Hampshire based, so it wasn't like we were merging with London and other kind of situations. But the real thing that struck me, because I went in about a year, 18 months after the merger, was I was told by kind of senior managers at the time how kind of burnt out they were from change. And actually nothing had barely changed. What they were burnt out from was firefighting from the merger. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
And that was a real thing for me. They felt like they'd been through change, and actually they'd hardly been through anything. And that theme, I suppose, runs through a lot of the things that I've been involved in. I don't know whether that's me burning people out or just change generally, but I think there is a perception sometimes that you've changed because you've been going through change. But actually, if you look at the tangible outcomes of what's changed, not that much sometimes. And that's a real challenge, because you've got to you've got to almost invigorate them and win those hearts and minds all over again as part of that process.
And I think there's a tendency, it'd be interesting to get your view, but there's a tendency for organisations to do a lot of things piecemeal. So there is this constant state of change, but lots of projects that are being run in many cases independently, that are having an impact upon the same people multiple times. And that's tiresome for lots of people, because they're trying to do their day job as well as getting involved in these change programs. But when you look back as an outsider or an independent view, and you look at, well, this is where you started and this is where you were wanting to get to, but you're probably only 20% of the way there, then that's, you get that sort of rolling of the eyes, don't you? And here we go again. And I know I've had lots of experiences where people have just got into the routine of keeping the head down, thinking that if I don't get involved in this, then it'll go away. And then 6 months later, something else will come. So I just keep my head down, and they sort of absolve themselves from getting involved, really, which can be quite challenging to turn them around.
You can, and I think you also see that where there's been quite a few failed change projects.
Yeah,
is there's that apathy against the whole change kind of cycle, and go, well, it didn't work the last 4 times, so actually, if I just hide, I'll be in exactly the same position in 2 years' time. So it'll be fine.
So how have you dealt with that situation? It sounds like you've come across it. So how have you managed to deal with that?
I think mostly through momentum and proof of change.
Yeah.
So as you say, I think it's very difficult to say, hey, Troy, we're doing this great change program. Look how exciting it is. And for Troy to go, yeah, but I've been here for the last 4 that haven't worked. And in fact, number 2 is exactly the same as the one you're talking about right now. So I can't do anything to switch that just from talking.
Yeah.
The only thing that can show it is through action. And I think, it's your previous point, I think, about the same people being used. We've got exactly that challenge in Wandle right now with the changes we're trying to put in, replacing kind of significant burdens on lots of key people across that. But what we've tried to do is start delivering outcomes as quickly as we possibly can to get the buy-in and show that it's a little bit different. We've done lots of kind of art of the possible, hearts and minds stuff, all of that. But again, that didn't show any proof until we actually started delivering change. So putting in dynamics, I think from signing the contract and finishing kind of procurement, the first bit of functionality went live within kind of 4 or 5 months. Right. As far as that goes, and so rather than waiting for everything to be ready, as you sometimes do on the more traditional IT projects, we wanted to actually show a difference. We wanted to be able to show the impact of what we were doing really in some of that, and in some cases run some pilots just to prove that some of this stuff was possible as well. So we've run pilots with some smart techs, smart sensors and stuff. We've done a series we did some chatbot type stuff as well. I remember one of my first kind of team away days, my directorate away days at Wandle. We took all of our back office guys, HR, facilities, everyone, and we actually just one of the activities in the afternoon was to program a chatbot within your team. Come up with a concept and do it, just to open people's minds to the concept of what can you do, and actually it's not quite as difficult as sometimes. Certainly the tech isn't always as difficult as sometimes if you can get the processes. So predominantly it's been around just the proof being in the pudding. Here's a change, and people might still be, I suppose, opposed to it, resistant to the change and everything else, but at least they're getting to the point of understanding it's going to happen this time. It might be delayed, it might cost slightly more, all of those normal IT things, but actually it definitely is coming. We brought a change consultant in as at the outset of Wandle, actually probably too early, but 3 to 6 months before the first changes were delivered, to take every individual through that change process, the change cycle. And of course, what that then did was drove our employees to go, well, tell me what the change is. Tell me what's happening. Well, we can't tell you yet because we haven't done it. But that it was almost the opposite view in that situation of going, I'm now nervous about the change.
They're ready for the change,
But they wanted the there. They wanted to understand that really. So yeah, that's how we kind of dealt with it, or attempted to deal with it at one.
I think there's 2 key messages I think that come out of that. One, which is I suppose what we all used to call quick wins. If you can demonstrate some quick wins, it's like the football people, managers, isn't it? New manager goes and demonstrate some quick wins, and we get a bit of breathing space, and people believe in what we're trying to do. But the second one, which I thought was very important, is the getting people into it and getting them responsible for it and feeling it and tasting it and getting their hands dirty and coming up with some, because then they believe it because it's tangible. It's just not someone telling them what's going to happen or a nice glossy video telling them how it's going to be. They're actively getting involved in delivering that, and those are two big key success factors, I believe, in driving transformation through.
I agree in the first point, whilst not taking away, as you say, from the importance of the second point. The first point I find interesting. Back in my consultancy career, we did a piece of work for an Irish pension company, and we delivered this report at the end, kind of talking about changes and about kind of an 18-month cycle. And the people we gave it to, presented to, they came to us at the end and said, "That's great, we've never delivered quick wins within 18 months before." And it's like, let me be clear, that's not a quick win then. That's a long process. And I think it's again about the cultural, it's about the history, it's about all of those other things that come in to understand what a quick win and momentum looks like. Because change projects particularly, but IT projects generally, I would say, need momentum. They need people on board. You need to get that momentum growing over time. Otherwise, it will just get lost. And what you'll find is people opting out, people disappearing to, particularly in a busy sector such as housing, to work on other things, like you were saying earlier. At the very least, the day job, if nothing else. So, got to get that momentum and kind of work into it. And so, that's been key.
Okay. So your role at the moment is Director of Business Services and Transformation. So in the role now, how do you define transformation?
Making things radically different than they are today or they were yesterday, fundamentally, and that isn't just IT. IT is, as we always talk about, the enabler for that, but it's actually changing conceptually a whole host of things. Let me try and give you a better example than me just jabbering on. We started talking to the board a couple of years ago about change, about transformation, investment in IT, and the board said, "Well, okay, describe to us how it will be different. What's going to be, we were looking at value for money, saying, well, we'll have some less people doing things, we'll be doing things in a different way." And the board's like, "Okay, we'll describe what that means then, what's the difference?" So we went away. It was business planning season. It was time to write a new corporate plan, a strategy. And we went away and said, actually, what we want to do is design a target operating model. An operating model that, rather than just a set of tasks, and there are lots of tasks in there, we wanted to describe the vision at the end of how we would be different as an organization. And actually, I don't know whether I'll be the only one that you speak to in these kind of chats that says this, but COVID's been good for our vision, because actually we set a vision for 2024. And guess what? That vision was about releasing capacity so that we can do more support calls and support those in need. COVID hit us, lockdown hit us. What did we do? And most of the sector did this. They started ringing all the most vulnerable customers on their list. And, we were doing things like helping get food get delivered to them, people who English wasn't their first language. We were translating the COVID guidelines and instructions to people in that situation. Stuff 2 years ago, you never would have gone, that's kind of what we'd be doing in our services. And of course, and everyone else is in this situation. We're writing an accommodation strategy right now for the future, and it was actually due earlier this year, kind of the concepts. And if I'd taken it to exec and the board in January and said, "This is it, we're not going to need an office, or it's going to be a third of the size of our office now," they would have laughed me out of the meeting. Whereas today they're far more open, having experienced the fact that actually finance guys have done an amazing job doing year end remotely. Not one kind of face-to-face meeting in that situation. So I think that momentum we talked about earlier, the kind of visualization or the realization of some of that change has actually come out in what has been a terrible situation, obviously, for everyone, people being ill. But it has proved, and I think thankfully, because of the work we'd done a year ago on our infrastructure to enable work, because of course some people not everyone starts in the same position around IT and stuff like that. We were able to cope with that, not without problems, but cope. First week, I think we saw our network crash, and we lost 5 days of network.
Wow.
But 2 of them were over the weekend, thank goodness, and our IT guys moved heaven and earth to get stuff back up and running. But it took so long because we had so much stuff on our servers that needed recovering. Right. So of course that's now, lesson learned is we've got to work in a different way, and kind of move that through. So yeah, the target operating model really allowed us to say, actually, this is what we do today, this is how we work, but actually in the future, this is what we're going to do. We're going to simplify our processes. We're going to automate things where we can. Customers are going to do more for themselves where they can, and actually that capacity is then going to be redirected into I suppose proactive service delivery where possible, as opposed to reactive. And then alongside that, we've started to demonstrate what data can do as far as understanding services. And you can't, when you're in customer services, you can't always be proactive, but you can predict. Now, I remember a story. I went along to a session once, and someone was telling a story about the barriers at TfL, where actually they almost self-diagnose, and when they're starting to feel a bit poorly, they tell the engineer that they need to come and look at them. And that stuck in my mind as almost the prediction of our service is actually there's a series of trigger points, and once several of those have been hit, we should be doing something other than waiting for 2 days for someone to ring and be unhappy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's quite a lot of technology out there now, isn't it? That monitoring technology for boilers or for heating systems or whatever that you can put on, that actually you can go out and knock on the door to say, looks like your boiler's just about to break, can we come in and fix it? Which is from a customer service perspective, is especially this time of year where people are really ratcheting up the heating, is absolutely so impressive, isn't it, that you've been proactive rather than waiting for someone to come in when it's failed.
And I think there's 3 steps in that. I suppose the starting point of someone currently rings. There's a next point where is actually when someone wakes up, they've got a text to say, we already know it's broken, we'll come out and do it. And then that final step, I suppose, is that bit of we go out before it breaks. The technology tells you before it's even that it's broken, that it's going to break, so you can prevent it in that situation. And I think as an example of transformation, that's a great example of transforming the service to customers.
Absolutely. Because then it becomes proactive maintenance rather than reactive, and it's a lot cheaper to manage proactive maintenance, isn't it?
Well, and just aside from anything, it's better service in its purest sense. It's it's that situation when you're on Amazon and they keep firing stuff at you. Well, because you bought this, you now want these things. In a few years, those will be right. At the moment, they're kind of random because people buy random things. If anyone's the same kind of situation as me, if they buy something I buy, they'll then get loads of Star Wars kind of suggestions on the same side. But whereas in the future, it'll become even more nuanced. And I think that's the thing about services, that personalization. I remember I tell a story about service quite regularly about Marriott hotels. When I was doing some consultancy, always stayed in the same Marriott hotel in one of the places. I'd be there 1 or 2 nights a week, generally for a period of time. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, they got to a situation where when I turned up, they recognized me. They said, "Oh, kind of, Mr. Henshall, welcome," etc., etc. And that difference from the service in the first situation wasn't bad at all, but the service after that couple of weeks became exceptional because it was far more personalized, and they knew me.
No, absolutely. And that, interestingly enough, I've used Marriott a lot for exactly that, because when you book, they ask you a series of questions, don't you, in terms of do you want the particular type of pillar that you want, or the particular type of bedding that you want, and stuff like that, and that goes into the system. And it's fascinating because, as you say, once they recognize you, they're oh yeah, we've got you this room because of this, or we've got you that room, and it doesn't matter which hotel you go into, they've got that consistency, haven't they? And in most cases, certainly if you're in the same one regularly, don't even need to go through that checking in process. They almost just throw your key at you as you kind of walk past, and you go straight in. It's just
that difference in service. Like I say, it's not from a bad service to a great service. It's from a good service to a great service. And I think that's the nuances as we go through it.
Yeah, but coming back to the maintenance bit, the beauty of that is that you've got absolutely great customer service, and at the same time you're taking cost out of the process. So it's a win-win-win, isn't it?
And yeah, true transformation. And I think, you know, when I first went along to Wandle for this role, we were talking a lot at that time about business improvement, that continuous improvement model, which is absolutely fine and the right way to do things, depending on your starting point. If your starting point is you need to transform to take a giant leap and then continuously improve, that's exactly the right thing to do. You know, we can't continually transform, because if we do, we will get, as we were talking about earlier, we will see burnout, we will see an impact on other things, because it's such a resource intensive kind of program to go through. If you do it right and then you do the continuous improvement, it will allow you to keep pace and keep at the forefront of things. You know, we're not creating new technology, we're not creating any of these concepts. We can survive on continuous improvement if we're further enough along the kind of platform in the first place.
Absolutely.
What we've seen, and if there are any managers from Wandle listening, you need to turn off at this point. What we've seen is actually the view that staff on the front line are innovating more right now, because they haven't got someone on their shoulder kind of in the same way. And that isn't a criticism of our management. It's just an observation that actually people feel you can, as we know, lots and lots of research, you can only innovate in the right circumstances. And under pressure, surrounded by work, is not one of those situations where it's easy to innovate. We've tried to do that. We've tried to hold specific sessions, but people think and come up with ideas in different ways. And you know, working at home seems to have allowed people to go, why am I doing it this way? Is there a better way? And certainly during the first lockdown, when we went back to staff and said we want to do things differently, you know, we want to let properties in a different way so that you can do as much as you can remotely, people came up with some great ideas. And you know, that's been a real advantage, because as we know, it shouldn't be coming from the top down or from specific roles in organizations. We actually want the innovation to be pushed up. And I kind of, ever since I joined, been saying we've got this really big wall in the office in Wandle. I would love to have like 1,000 kind of things on there that staff are saying to us, you need to do. Because one of the first conversations we had with staff around innovation and transformation, talking about what do you have in your homes? And, you know, lots of people talking about the hive systems, you know, the heating stuff. We're saying, well, why have you got that and our customers haven't? You know, don't they deserve that access to that same technology and stuff? Trying to get people's minds open to, actually, why haven't I gone internally and said, why aren't we doing the equivalent of hive for everyone in our properties? That's the mindset I think you want, alongside the service mindset that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. And I think also one of the elements that have come out from people working from home is that they feel much more empowered to do things to meet the needs of the client, because we all know that the world's changed and there's people are going through different challenges. So if I can help you, I will do. And if that means going slightly out of due process or so, then you know I'm not going to get slapped down because I've helped you and I've delivered something. And that in itself can open up so many new ways of working, new ideas, can't it?
Yeah, it can, and I think we've been trying to push that mindset for some time. I remember our chief exec, whenever she kind of talks about this, talks to staff and says, if our process is stopping you from delivering the right service, you need to push back. You need to come and tell us we need to change the process, because it clearly isn't right. We should not have a process that is perversely almost punishing customers in that situation. Or I think, you know, that's exactly what you're talking about. I think we've had that opportunity in that situation, because in most cases we haven't had a choice. You know, previously you have that debate over, well, how, when, what we're doing, but actually in this situation things just need sorting. You know, as I was talking about the support calls, some of those, when the local authorities were sending food parcels and other stuff out, some of the people we spoke to hadn't received them. Now, if you stuck to a process, you'd go, well, okay, we'll ring the local authority, we'll tell them to do it. But these are people without, you know, water to drink, without food. And so we solved the problem. There's a story where we luckily co-op were supporting lots of people during that time. They just delivered a free food basket to a household in that situation. But that's that thing of the right thing. It wasn't within the process, not within our tenancies, not within any of those things. Just needed doing in the right way.
Absolutely. I think the other interesting aspect is that you always say that change is successful when there's a cliff edge, and COVID was that. Absolutely, it was the ultimate cliff edge, wasn't it? But I think also a lot of people, a lot of organisations have been probably surprised that how quickly people adapted to that. So we got to the cliff edge and we all jumped off, and it was like jumped off, closing your eyes and hoping for the best. But actually, loads of people have successfully been able to adapt to a massive amount of change, and I just wonder what that means for the future, because some of the preconceived ideas that actually we can't all work from home, or people don't like massive amounts of change. Yeah. That's to some extent been blown out of the water over the last 6-12 months or so. What's your perception of that moving forward to, in terms of how you feel you can utilise that, I suppose, to deliver the change in the change mandate that you've got within Wandle moving forward?
Can I answer that in two ways? I want to come back on the first point, because I wonder whether it was easier because everyone was I was going to say misled. That's not, but maybe didn't understand the scale of the situation. Because I think when we all kind of locked down for that first time, the belief was generally it was for a short period.
Of course. Yeah.
And so I think what happened was people kind of all rolled their sleeves up and said, oh, well, it's for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, it'll be okay. Not for what may turn out to be a year by the time we kind of get back to or head towards that. So I think there is something about the narrative and the storytelling and the expectation, because I think we would have seen a lot more resistance at that early point going, what, how? And I think we then also responded in different ways. You look at people weren't set up in a lot of cases to work at home. The infrastructure was there, but actually, are you sat at an uncomfortable kitchen table? Have you kind of got 12 books holding your screen up and all those other things that kind of go with that? And so I think people adapted, and once it got past, I mean, we made a decision relatively early on that we weren't going to force people to return. And once we made that commitment, we then saw more requests coming through of, oh, well, if I'm going to be here for longer, then can I have this or can I have that? And we supported people with that. But I think that first point was around, how long do we have to survive in this situation? People are very resilient. You say to people, oh, you've only got to do this for 4 weeks, or you've only got to do this for a period of time. People see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. I think where we've seen more psychological kind of challenges with people and the pressure is with this, I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. Now, obviously, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen some great news about vaccines and everything else that we now think by Easter next year, things will be radically different or radically improved. But you still had during that summer period, that real challenge of how long have I got to be in this situation, because I'm really struggling. I don't know. And we introduced a weekly kind of staff morale snapshot when we locked down to try and get some measure. Not everyone completes it every week, but a number do, and we get some scores. But more importantly, we get some comments around how people are feeling. We've seen low points in morale during the Black Lives Matter issues, during the US election. That's been mentioned a few times. Lots of other things feeding into people's kind of mindset and their morale. But the key thing all the time is, when is this going to end? When will there be kind of clarity? And so that's a really long way of responding to your first point. But I think we should take note that it wasn't like we said, right, you've got a year now, you've got to do it. It was viewed to be a short period of time. However,
we can learn from that, though. Just before you go on, we can learn from that, because in terms of how you communicate around change and how you communicate around the programs moving forward, we can learn from the fact that actually early doors it was okay because we thought it was short, but that's about being honest and about being open and communicating effectively, isn't it?
It is, and I suppose that turns us all the way back to one of our earlier conversations. We had momentum. we had the, the art of the possible was being shown to us. So after 2 weeks, after 4 weeks, people going, actually, this isn't quite as bad as I envisaged. The finance guys were finding a way to do year end remotely. So what they thought was impossible before was difficult, more difficult than being sat close to each other. But what you also found, I think, and again comes back to the innovation mindset, was people trying things to make it work. We had a team only a little while ago, actually. They spent all day logged into Teams as a team to try and recreate that sitting in a department, being able to go, oh, I've got a question. So they were on mute, but if someone had a question, they were able to do it. Now, whether that works or not, just that concept of actually, well, let's give it a go. Let's try and see what happens in respect to that kind of situation. I think people just are open to finding better, quicker and easier ways to do things because of the challenges of working remotely. But I agree with what you say. I think the storytelling and the lessons that we learned from that COVID kind of change cycle that we kind of went through, is really, really important, and we've got to understand that. And I think the amount of IT systems we might have implemented between us, how many did people really understand what they were getting, what they were going live with, how much pain they were going to cope with for a period? Because at Wandle we've done kind of an agile-ish approach to kind of implementation, but we're quite a period on, and we haven't gone back and fixed the bits that need fixing in the earlier processes. People going, this isn't working, particularly new people going in, this isn't working as well as I would have wanted it to in that situation. And of course, we probably didn't tell them it might be 18 months, 2 years before we fix it. We just said when we finished, we'll go back and fix the things in priority order. And, as you say, that communication and that honest conversation about, okay, you're going to have to put up with it maybe for 2 years.
Absolutely.
Is a thing we missed out on, I think.
Yeah,
and I think going back to discussion we had earlier about target operating model, that was exactly our view, that one of the bigger changes we wanted to see in the organisation was the focus on outcomes and affecting people's lives. There's probably 100 measures in there, but they're really to check we're on the right path, not to check against the outcomes, if that makes sense. Absolutely. And we want it to kind of slowly evolve to get past that. I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that shift to outcomes, which of course is what the kind of lean processes and everything have told us, is don't measure at that front end, don't measure the outcomes at the end. How effectively are you operating is a key thing. And when we talk about IT being an enabler, aside from improving processes, that's the key thing. Data for me is that key outcome of what's come out of this, both around kind of COVID services and all of that stuff, but more importantly around our processes and what we can transform in the future around that different model of actually understanding our customers more, understanding our services more, understanding data more in respect to that.
Okay, no, that's great, thank you. So just finishing off, if you could pull everything together, all your experience together, and leave the listeners with one takeaway, what's that one thing that you think is absolutely essential in delivering successful transformation?
This is where I wish I prepared for this and thought about something in advance. I think, and I described this, I suppose, when I talk to new starters coming into Wandle and people in our organisation more generally, be relentless in your quest for improvements. I think that it's so important. Whether we call it transformation, whether we call it change, don't ever give up that drive to improve, because it's so critical. And actually, once you give it up, you lose your momentum, you lose your kind of progress. You'll find yourself 5-10 years out of date before you know it, because and particularly in the current climate, again, you'll know this more than I do, because so much is changing. If you're not thinking now about what you're building and the environment for tech within that new build, by the time you actually need to use that tech, it'll be retrofitting and all that other stuff will be too late in that situation. Just be relentless in the quest. Doesn't mean you have to change. You have to buy you have to be an early adopter for everything. You have to do everything in that way. But just be relentless in the vision and the challenge that you give yourselves in that situation.
Yeah, I think you've got to always be moving forward, haven't you? Because you can never stop. Because as soon as you stop, you're moving backwards. Because the world's moving forwards.
Absolutely.
And I think, like you say, that relentlessness of constantly looking to improve and to move forward is a critical skill and a critical for successful transformation and successful business.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much. That's really good. Thanks for your time. We occasionally get some questions. It's if I sort of pull them together, you're happy to engage with people if they've got any particular question. Most of them just come in as just looking at a little bit more deeper understanding of some of the points that you raised.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Brilliant. Well, cheers, Troy. Thank you very much.
All right, take care. See you soon.
Well, that was an interesting episode, wasn't it? I love the final message, to be relentless in focusing on the future and in driving change. Thanks, Troy, for your time and for sharing your experience in so much detail. The driving focus of this pod is to provide you with insights into real experiences of delivering change. The hope is that you can maybe take one or two ideas from each episode that will help you to successfully deliver your change agenda now and in the future. I passionately believe that sharing experiences is a key element of learning and improvement. The Transformation Leaders Hub is a community of programme, project, change and transformation professionals and provides you access to a great network of experienced people to do just that. Take a look and give it a try with our trial member offer. With that, here's to a massively successful 2021. See you soon.